The indie author revolution has been around for more than a decade, but we indies continue to push the boundaries of what we're capable of. From getting over initial prejudices to staring down perfectionism and author imposter syndrome, we've become a force to reckon with. Now, after years of hustle and grind, we indies are rebelling again. Gone are the days of publishing a book a month until we drop, and in its place we're sowing the seeds of a better way. A way with more ease, abundance, and flow. Get ready to learn about indie authorship from a whole new perspective. We're about to cover everything from releasing your poverty mentality to manifesting your millionaire author destiny. I'm Carissa Andrews, and this is the Author Revolution Podcast.
Well, hi there, and welcome back to the Author Revolution Podcast. Oh, today is going to be a great one for you. So I have brought back Kat Caldwell, the amazing Kat Caldwell, to talk about authorship in what's happening in the world of authorship. What are the trends that we're seeing as indie authors who have been around for a while? But more than that, Kat is also talking about what she's planning on doing this year, including the ways that she's helping indie authors to level up. In specific, she's actually utilizing retreats in order to help indie authors really immerse themselves into their writing, into the characters that they're trying to build, and helping authors level up in new ways that really we haven't seen a whole lot before, right? So if you're a new author or an author who's looking for just a little bit of insight into the trends that are happening, or want to just hear writers talking about being writers, this is a fantastic episode just for you. So let's get to it.
Well, hey there, Kat. Welcome back to the Author Revolution Podcast. I'm so laughing because we've been talking for quite a while here. Woo! Okay. But I'm excited to bring you back. Obviously, you were on the podcast last year, which was amazing. And I know that there's a lot of cool new things that you've been up to. So I wanted to bring you back in and talk about all the fun stuff that's going on in your world. How have you been this past year?
I've been busy. How about you?
I've been busy as well, funnily enough.
You're
No,
good,
totally bored. Yeah, that's my life.
Yes, always bored, right? Nothing
Right?
to do over here.
Nothing, obviously. The life of an author, nothing going on.
No, I never have 5 books in the back of my head.
Right? Only 5.
At the moment, yes.
Yeah, got it. So what have you been doing? How have you been?
So let's see. Since we talked, I got certified through Author Accelerator for fiction, and
Nice.
hopefully by the time this goes out, I'll be done with my nonfiction as well. And that was an interesting step because I was just really into educating myself last year on craft and writing and those who have gone before me. And so I thought that I would sort of wrap it up with a little bow as like a treat to myself, which might sound weird to people, like studying and doing work was a treat to
Not
myself.
to this person. No, not at all.
I'm so curious about how other people are doing things. And I think Jenny Nash did a really good job of building a system in which you are training hundreds of people to do kind of the same thing. And she did a really good job. So I was impressed with that. And it's a great community. And it has inspired me on how I want to move forward because I really like teaching about writing and storytelling. And my husband's really tired of me teaching it to him. Every time we watch a movie, he's like, how did you know that was going to happen? Because I'll tell him.
Right.
So I should probably teach writers.
That's probably smart. Yeah.
I think they'll appreciate it more. So I thought about doing, I'm a certified book coach. So the typical thing is you go one-on-one or group. And I have some really great one-on-one clients, but I decided that I want to go into workshops.
Cool.
And retreats. And so that has been my main focus for the first quarter of 2023.
That's amazing. It's so interesting too, because it's such a different, from one-on-one to going into workshops and live retreats. It's such a different vibe. And it's so much fun to actually get the experience of working with people in real life versus just virtually. I mean, virtually is great too, especially if you do something where you can interact. But what do you think drew you to that sort of spectrum?
There's 2 things. So I do some workshops online, but it's always kind of been my dream. My husband's from Spain, and every time we go there, I'm just I love that country. It's funny because I didn't give it a second thought growing up. It was all about France and Germany and Russia and England for me. I just forgot about Spain. Of course, I married someone from Spain and I had to learn all about it. And I think it's always been a dream kind of in the back of my head of I would love for people to come experience this country, the food especially, and have a space to write.
That's
And
so
so
cool.
that's always sort of been in the back of my head. And but then of course I live most of my life here. And I know that writers want to have these sort of hands-on, almost one-on-one experiences, but a lot of fiction writers just can't or won't dive into one-on-one coaching.
Sure.
And so they're sort of working on certain things like scenes or characters or how do I plot or my dialogue is terrible, and they just don't, they're not ready for one-on-one or they can't afford one-on-one, like all the different reasons, right? And so I just thought, there's always that pinpoint that you're just like, I wish I could just have a workshop about characters and like, why can I not go forward in this? And why am I stuck in my book? Or like, what do people mean by my book should be 80,000 words? I have written 160,000 words. And like, what does this mean? I saw this on Twitter the other day,
Right.
it was like, well, you need to cut scenes. How do you do that? I mean, I've been there. I had to do that in the beginning.
Right.
Dialogue, like people want help on dialogue and what does it mean, and sort of brainstorming and just having this interaction, because I also think that, well, maybe I'm certified and I've read all the books and I really like doing that. That doesn't mean that writers don't also have some really great ideas as well. And if we can get everyone together, I'll say like, well, this is what your dialogue made me think of, or this is what your scene made me think of. And then you just get real feedback on, that's not how I wanted my character to sound, or that's not what I wanted you to take away, or it is, and so you just
Right.
get that like way to move forward in the moment instead of waiting till you send the whole thing to your editor.
Right.
You get that like overwhelmed feeling of, oh, I have to cut 60,000 words. That's insane.
Right. Well, and I think authors too, especially in the beginning, but I think if they've isolated themselves, like perhaps after COVID,
Yes.
there's this desire to know if you're doing it right. And the only way that you can really think about like, how can I do that is by getting direct feedback. And, whether it's a writer's group or going to something like a retreat or a workshop where you can get that, it's almost like that very specific personalized feedback on your thing. But at the
Yes.
same time, you're interacting with authors who are in the same boat, or you're interacting with people who maybe know just a little bit more than you, and you become friends. And so now you've got this thing going on. Even if you're introverted, it's something that is so
Right.
much fun to kind of push those boundaries and like expand your, horizon on writing, on structure, on everything. It's so neat.
Yeah. Yes. And I think you also see how much you do know, which
Yeah.
is also really encouraging, of like being able to sort of let down your guard and give feedback in a different way, I think, than in a critique group. I don't know about you, but every critique group I go to is, we're a little bit guarded because it's usually very quick. You have 2 minutes to give your feedback on this, and you have to
Yes.
sort of read really quickly, and it's a very short piece, but an area in which you can just really sort of relax and know that we're all there. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, I'm still learning, I still need your feedback. People will tell me like, oh, that's not how I saw this character, I saw them like this. I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting because that's not how he
Right.
is in my head. I mean, we all need it, and it's great to get it, like you said before, in the moment that we feel like we need it, really.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting too when you get different feedback on words or dialogue. Like for me, it was always dialogue tags. There were
Mhm.
certain dialogue tags that I liked. Like I think it was he snickered or she snickered or Snickers or whatever. And to me, that just means that they're laughing under their breath, being a little bit like, okay.
Yeah.
And to my best friend who was reading as a beta reader at the time, she was like, that's like being rude and mean. And I'm like,
Oh,
that is
no.
not how I meant that character to be. Or like, no.
Oh,
And so every
wow.
time she read that, she was like, what an ass. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
isn't that fascinating? You'd
It
rather
is.
get that before you hit
Yeah,
publish.
for
And
sure.
it's always like, I always tell them it's about being empowered to make the decision as the writer, too. Like,
Oh, yeah.
whether or not you change it, knowing that you chose to go forward in the decision, having made the decision on purpose, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe asterisk snickered is
Right.
not
Could be a
maybe.
trigger word or something might not, yeah, might lead them not to not like this character as much. I don't know. I think she got over it once I explained it a little bit more. She's
Right.
like, oh, all right.
I'll try to think of it that way.
It's so funny. It's so interesting how people do read and perceive the same piece of art differently. I think Joss Whedon actually said that, where it's like, you
Right.
write this thing and put it out into the world, and all of a sudden it's like a teenager where it grows up and talks back to you, but it's not like what you
Yes.
expected it to be. Yeah, it's crazy. Oh my gosh. So obviously you helping authors develop their stories has always been a passion. I mean, with your
Yeah.
course that you have, courses, and the things that you do with your journaling and everything that you've taught on your podcast, it's just one of your loves, right?
Yes.
So I know you have some tips for authors when they're coming up with trying to find their storylines or their
Mm.
story more quickly. Do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I've really looked into this topic because I had some struggles last year as I was writing this story that I had in my head, and yet as I got it on paper, I threw it away twice. I
Oh
literally
my.
deleted it and started over again. And I really think that it's all about finding your characters and spending the time. I mean, plotting is awesome, but you can only get so far with plotting and actually writing out that plot if you don't know your character.
Absolutely.
And I think it has a lot to do with, as we always say, their wants, their desires, their fears, right? But also their personality and how you've developed them. Because the idea of like, so I was working with somebody who was writing a historical fiction, and she's telling me all about her characters, and then she had like, in here they're going to have, the meet cute. And we were talking about how she has set up her character, and I said, that's not going to work for your character. That's just not how she's going to see it as far as what you've told me you want her to be like, right?
Yeah.
Because she's dealing with abandonment and guilt and shame, and like, even if he's handsome, if he bumps into her, that's not going to be cute to her. She's going to be like, I am overwhelmed and I am traveling and I am with kids, and all the men in her life have abandoned her or treated her poorly. So like, we need to work this out.
Yeah.
And it's like, this happens to us all the time as writers, right? We have an idea of a certain, like, how the story's going to go, and then we create the characters, and then we're like, well, why isn't it working?
Yeah. Why is it
You
not
know?
jiving the way I thought it would?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, but yeah, I've read books too where you get halfway through and you're just like, I don't understand why they're making these decisions, like, that's not how I have this character in my head. And
Yeah.
so I am really encouraging people to just dig into their characters, and then to really be open to changing what you thought the book might be, like
Right.
what you thought the story might be. I think we all had to do it, right?
People and characters have a way of changing things.
Yes.
They
Yes.
really
And
do.
they'll make it better, right? Like, if you're trying to force them into a certain situation, like I was telling another group the other day, like, you're going to have different reactions from like Indiana Jones versus like Elle from Legally Blonde in every situation.
Yes.
So you have to think of your characters like that too, like really make them come alive, and then put them in the situation and allow them to be how you've created them. But you
Yep.
can't like take Elle and make her suddenly act like Indiana Jones.
For
It's just,
sure.
it's not gonna work.
I mean, you could get kind of close, I guess, with like the Tomb Raider chick, but that's
Yes.
about as
But she'd have to have like some growth there, right? Like, she'd
yeah,
have to
yeah. She'd
have an
have to get
arcing
there at some
change.
point. Maybe be dropped on a deserted island. I don't
Right.
know.
Like, what could Elle do on a deserted island in her terms? I don't know.
Right? I love that you brought up the meet cute, because I was mentioning this. I think it was in my normal newsletter, even just this week, where it's like I had never even heard of that term, and
Really?
I've been in this industry for like a decade, right? And like, because I'm more plot, like with my urban fantasy, I'm more plot driven versus I still create the characters, I still flesh
Mhm.
them out, but it like never occurred to me that something was described like this. And so when my friend, like, I'm in the process of creating a romance pen name, and
Okay.
my friend had my friend NPA Jenny had recommended a so not meet cute, and I was like, what the
What does that mean?
hell is a meet cute? Like, what is this? And now I'm seeing it and hearing it freaking
Right.
everywhere.
That's so funny. It's like that
And I'm
car that
like,
you just
okay,
bought. Now you see it everywhere. I know.
right? I can't unknow this now.
Yes, and it's funny because we'll come up. There's so many things to know with writing and the industry, and like the genres keep like just ballooning. Like there's just branching out like constantly, and the tropes as well. And so I think sometimes we just see things and, sometimes maybe we just put names to it because we're not really sure where we're going to go in the book or whatever. And so it's just funny how many things there are out there.
Right. And that
Um,
you keep learning them. Even, like I said, a decade in, you're going to learn something that maybe you just never had the need
yeah,
to know before now.
right. There's probably
You
not a
know?
whole lot of meet cutes in sci-fi
Right.
fantasy.
Sci-fi, and probably in fantasy, as long as there's a romance in
Maybe
there.
if there's a romance,
Yeah.
right?
But I'd never described, like, who describes things as that? Like, really? Like, why not a
Romance
cute
authors.
meat? You know what I mean? Why not a cute meat? But I get it. Like, we want something that stands out, and it's done its job. It stands out.
Now it's in your head.
It's in my head. I can't let it go now. So weird.
Yes, it is
So
weird.
speaking of shifts in the publishing market, because obviously there are tons of them that we could
Mhm.
go into so many of them. I'm curious about your thoughts on AI. Like what do you think about AI and like how it's impacting authors right now? Because it's such a huge,
It's
huge thing
become a
that's
huge
going
thing.
on.
I mean, I listened to Joanna Penn's, and I listened to another podcast on futurist stuff, and it didn't surprise me,
Same.
but I can see why some people are freaking out. I'm excited about it, honestly. I think that anyone who uses it well with their writing craft is going to benefit from it. And I think some people out there will probably use it to try to write a book, and I just don't think it will go anywhere because I've read blog posts where you're just like, this is not a person behind this. There's no way.
Right. And it's super interesting to me too. I'm very much the same where I feel like it's a tool that, it's like ebooks. Everybody thought ebooks were going to be the
Right.
end of the book industry. Like no one was ever going to buy a paperback book again. It's like, okay, and we were so scared of it. And now it's like become this, like, I don't know, if another foundation, a different branch of the entire thing. And I think AI is very similar. If we can go into it with our eyes wide open,
Mhm.
trusting that we can utilize it as something that can help us versus being afraid of it, I think we can
Right.
really do some interesting things with it because it can help you with, I mean, everything from ideation to outlining to character
Right.
creation. I mean, all sorts of ways, social media posts when you really don't want to have to write those. You know what I mean? All those things.
Yes.
Yeah, and yet there are so many authors who are so afraid of it. I think it's always going to be that way. There's going to be that fear side, and there's going to be that, let me try this thing out and see how it helps.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like remember 10 years ago when people were afraid to send their book out because they were afraid that it was going to get plagiarized and copied. And I'm sure you
Right.
were around for that. And
Yep.
somebody just a few months ago asked me about it. And I said, listen, you can plagiarize anything. Like you really can. I mean, I send things out as PDF files, to people, worksheets, checklists, whatever. I mean, you could take this book and you could just copy it I mean, nothing's stopping anyone from that. So,
Yeah.
but I just don't see how it's going to benefit them because in the end, they still got to sell it to make any money.
Right. And then
So,
if they get caught plagiarizing, now all of a sudden they've got a lawsuit on their hands.
right.
So,
Right. So I just don't see the point in worrying too much about it. I mean, I do think that AI has a lot of good points. Like some people are upset about the audiobook thing, but I'm actually kind of excited about it.
same.
I think it will help reach people. I think it will get better and better. I can't say that I just don't love my audiobooks with the real people because they can do all the accents and like, oh my gosh, I just listened to The Spy Who Loved Me and Rosamund Pike does it and she's amazing and like it's my favorite. But let's be honest, like most books aren't on audio and I wish they were.
Right. Right.
So,
And so it just makes it more accessible to people who
right,
like audio versus just, having to, I guess you can kind of get, I think, what is that called? Whisper sync, where you can get your
right.
book read to you, but it's still not the same.
Still not the
But at
same.
the same time, the audiobooks having the option to choose between, the author reading it, because I think Joanna Penn has talked about that, where it's like, the author reading it versus a full cast reading it versus AI, you have now all of a sudden choices and different price points. And so then you get to choose things. And so it just gives
Right.
us more opportunity, number one, to make money from the same IP, but also just different opportunities as a reader to choose what we want to listen to.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's really cool. I'm not I'm not one of those people who's afraid of tech. I've never been afraid of technology anyway. I don't think we're going to ever
You're a
get to the
sci-fi
point.
writer.
Yeah, there's never going to be a point where writers go, I give up. Never mind. I'm not going to do it.
No,
You
I
know?
think so too. And I mean, the art behind writing is writing about the human development and the human experience. So an AI can only take you so far, like you said, like, but I could ask Chat GPT, or if Microsoft gets their thing together, I mean, ask them like, what would an Enneagram 3 do in this situation? And you just ask, because it's impossible for us to know everything, right? Or
Mhm.
like, how many times are you writing something you're like, wait, what's that one thing called, that I need to know right now? Or what was were there cars in 1898? I don't even know. Like,
Right?
why
Yeah.
wouldn't you? We use Google. I
Yeah.
mean,
All the time.
all the
All the
time.
time.
And the SEO, the how do I make a headline better? We're using AI already. So
Oh
I
yeah. I mean,
say,
even with our Facebook
embrace it.
ads, everything, they're running AI behind the scenes. That's how it gets better and more adaptable for figuring out the audiences. I mean, we've been using AI for a long time. It's just that it's now become more of a mainstream usage where like blog entries to a magazine maybe are getting AI written, and I think I've seen that on Twitter quite a bit where they're getting like overrun by AI written articles and
Yeah, and
whatnot.
they're
But
terrible at the moment. So,
yeah,
you're not out of a job yet.
no, and I don't think we ever are. I think there's going to be a point where they're going to have to put some sort of regulation in place where Amazon's going to
Yeah.
require you to say like, is this written by AI? And if so, what percentage? So there's going to have to be something at some point. It's just not there yet.
It's not there yet. And I mean, the day that we're out of a job will be like the most restrictive society ever. So I
Right.
just don't think that we're there. Like those are the, dystopian, there are no stories anymore because we can't have people basically know the human
Right.
condition. And we're like, we're not living in the giver yet. Like it's
Thank
okay.
goodness. Thank
Good.
goodness. Oh my gosh. As much as it is art too, it's almost like a catharsis for us writers where it's like we can't not do this thing. Like
Yeah.
there's something in us where we have to get some sort of creation out. And I don't know about you, but when I'm not writing, so like if I've switched gears to author revolution only, I'm focused on a course or something, even though I'm writing blog posts and doing the thing, I still get grouchy because it's like I want to
Yeah.
get back to the book I want to write.
I know. I know. I gotta at least plot it out. I have an idea over
You're
here,
right.
Yes.
This character
Yes.
won't leave me alone, and the meet cute has to happen.
Yes, yes. It's like for our mental health, we have to
Yes,
write a little bit, or something. I feel the same. So yeah, we're still gonna be here.
I agree 100%. So, with the publishing space getting so difficult and so hard to crack, do you have any tips for authors who are trying to be seen, like marketing tips, things that you would
Oh.
recommend them doing?
I have been sitting back as I, keep throwing away manuscripts last year. I was also looking at the market and just listening to a lot of people. And I've worked with a couple different writers on their launching their books this year, and it does seem like everything is changing, and I'm not quite sure where it's changing to. I am going to try Kickstarter this year. I think that it's much different to talk to people about supporting you as an author than it is to, hey, will you please go buy my book? Because
Yeah,
people mean well, but they don't always follow through on things. And sometimes people don't mean well. So, there's that
right,
as well.
right.
I mean, we tend to be very introverted. I can talk about your book all day, and it's very difficult for me to talk about mine, you know. So
Yep.
I'm going to try Kickstarter, and I've been talking it up to everyone, even though I haven't, launched it yet, because I think that it does serve the author introverted mindset a little bit easier. I think also you sort of see a monetary return quicker.
Mm,
And of course that's work. It's still work. It's still marketing, it's still writing up your copy well, it's making videos, it's setting challenges and being part of, building this community, but I do think it helps you find your ideal reader sooner. See You can see like how wide your book might make it, and
mhm.
you might be unpleasantly surprised that this might not be a book for everyone, but it's okay. Like 500 people bought it and that might be the cap. I'm just thinking of like people write so many different things. So I really recommend people checking out the Writers MBA. Russell and Monica are doing a great job. A lot of writers have been setting up their Kickstarters and doing really well.
Absolutely.
Um, it's definitely something to look into.
For sure. And I think Russell was talking about at 20 books how one of the ways that he recommends the launch strategy with Kickstarter is to like go all in with Kickstarter and then go wide, see how it does wide first. And then if it's not doing as well, then niche down to like KU to try to capture, depending on genre, obviously,
Right.
capture those whale readers, as Michael Underlay calls them. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yes.
it's almost like this funnel where your Kickstarter is pretty cool because it has this like wide scope spectrum where people are kind of perusing like just for fun. And if there's not that many people doing it, because let's face it, Kickstarter's a little bit more putsy. Like you should do some of these mental gymnastics of like those challenges, those stretch goals, those fun things that
Right.
make it fun. And when authors are overwhelmed or if they're not sure how to do it, they're not going to do it. And so that it's not as packed right now of a space for authors. And so it's pretty cool to like get into that and try to mess around with it and play with it and have that playfulness mindset that I think really does seem to be like permeating the Kickstarter author realm.
Right. It's almost like what book launches kind of used to be, but now I don't know about you, but I feel like this nervous energy of urgency in the industry of like, I have to get out 50 books. I have to do, and instead of just enjoying their writing and doing the best book that they can, people are more focused on the number of books they can get out. But
Yeah.
you can only spend so much time launching those books. And now that things seem to be shifting, and if your launch only sells, maybe you give away 1,500, but it sells 50. Like, why would you continue to launch the next one? Because you're just like, that's disappointing. And it's hard not to have that affect your mindset. Like,
Oh, for sure. Well, and I think we're kind of reaching I guess the teenagerdom of indie authorship too, right? I mean, we've kind of come into the teenage, like how long it's been around where this has actually been a viable option. And so we're getting past this like urgency to do all the things and do it all fast as quickly as possible and realizing, hang on a second, this could be a sustainable thing that I want to continue to do. And I think I had reached that like understanding wall when I was trying to develop rapid release roadmap, because it was just so like, I knew I wanted to teach authors that you don't have to like sit on your book forever. But I also didn't want to go to the extreme of, writing like a crazy person every single year, because that's just not, in my brain, not sustainable, and it's not healthy for a person either, especially authors. We want that opportunity to be with our characters for a while or really develop the storylines. And like you were saying, spend more time on the launch part of it so that you can really celebrate its birth. It's like all the things.
I think it's all the things. It's like, I mean, I could have launched the second manuscript last year, but I wanted to take my time with the book because I knew, like, and I'm sure you've had that gut instinct that it could be better.
Yeah.
And it's like, instead of, and I had to have my writer friends be like, remember, like, calm down, you're okay. Because of course there were times in which I was like, I didn't get a book out this year. I didn't get a book out. I did, that other mindset coming in. And it's like taking the time to write what you actually want to write in a way that that you want to write it, finding the ideal reader instead of, I mean, ideal readers are changing. The readers are changing. Romance, you can't just say you're a romance reader anymore. There are like 50 kinds of romance now.
Yeah.
So you can't just market to romance. You have to find within romance. Sci-fi, completely different than what it was 20 years ago. So YA, everything has changed and readers have changed. And I think it's not that it's going to be easy or hard to find them. It's just going to require a shift. And you're ahead of the game on the mindset and the calming down and let's do this, and having the right mindset about everything from money to writing to business to marketing. So I think you're ahead of most people, but just watching you and Joanna and a lot of other people, like, telling those around me, like, okay, just keep going. Let's shift.
Yeah.
Because that's all you can do is shift and try something else. So Kickstarter's my shift this year.
I love it. I'm looking into the Kickstarter realm as well when I actually launch the romance pen name,
Hmm.
because it feels right for that particular pen name, but it won't be until next year because I do want to actually rapid release, put my money where my mouth is kind of thing. So I will be writing 3 books before I start launching them in
Right.
probably January of next year. But I love the Kickstarter element to it because it's a completely new pen name. No one knows, other than like the handful of people who did end up coming over by personal invite. It's like they don't, no one knows who this author is or who this person is
Right.
or that I've been around for a while or any of those things,
Right.
which is kind of exciting because
Yes.
I can just like write a review about the book I'm reading right now, or do some TikToks that no one knows it's actually me, or there's
Exactly.
almost like this fun anonymity that goes on behind the scenes as you're just connecting with the readers again versus like feeling like you have to perform.
Right.
You know,
Yes,
it's
that's a
it's
good word for it, is you feel
yeah,
like you have to perform and you have to be a certain person, right? And yeah, I think it's awesome. I mean, I'm kind of following your strategy as well. I'm waiting for 2 books to be done. It's going to come out as a duology.
I love
And
it.
like you said, like then you can still bring your book out wide.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's still more that you can do. I think that sometimes we forget that books are evergreens. They
right.
are. You
Yeah,
can
and
relaunch them however you want.
you can relaunch them. You could do a big, huge promo. You could decide, oh, we're going to celebrate this book because it's been out for 2 months. You could do anything you wanted.
Anything. Yes.
Yeah, make an event out of it. As long as it's an event and people are excited about it, like you are,
Yeah.
then it's a thing.
You're right. And I think it's about being excited about your book.
Yeah,
If and it depends on the personality. I can't write 6 books a year and be excited about every single one of them. I just don't have like that capacity of emotion. And when my husband buys me flowers, I'm like, "Thank you." So whereas like other friends might be like they can do it. And so I think it's like what you teach as well, and Claire Taylor is like finding what you are capable of and
yes,
what you want to do in your author career and following that instead of following other people.
I love it. Yeah. No, okay. So you mentioned Claire. Are you like, have you gone through when you're developing your characters the whole Enneagram version of like your characters? Do you incorporate that?
Yes. So
Yes, I
I
love it.
avoided Enneagram for the longest time until I picked up her book and I was like, I bet she knows what she's talking about. I highly recommend her book. It's
I do too.
very, very good.
This is
I
like the
especially
fourth time I've held this damn thing up. Claire, this is the fourth time now,
I know.
including your
Why'd you write such
podcast
a good
interview.
book? You're making us look bad. No.
It just happens to be on my desk because I'm still going through like, or I'm
Mine's just
revisiting
out
parts
of
of it.
reach right there.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm rereading it now. I mean, it's a really well thought out book, and I wish that she had written it, 10 years ago when I started,
Right.
but
Claire, come on. Why did you
come
take
on,
so
man.
long?
But it's awesome because it really pinpoints this like energy that I had been feeling last year. And I think she's correct. And so before the Enneagram, I resisted it forever. Like everyone in my church in Texas were talking about it. And I was really into personality. So I've studied mythology and I've studied psychology and the personalities. And it's all kind of the same thing. I
Sure.
do think the Enneagram helps if you don't want to do a lot of study. Like it's a
Sure.
lot easier to grasp. Whereas like psychology, you have to like it has funny names like openness and close and neuroticism, and people are like, oh, like what does
Like,
this mean?
oh, I don't want to be neurotic. What?
Yes, what is this? So, but I think it's very helpful to understand you as the author and what you should do in your career, what you're capable of, what will stress you out, what will make you, still be kind to your family when you
Right.
leave your
Right.
office and your
Even when you're
characters too.
stressed.
Yes, like happy, what level of stress can you handle? But yeah, I do it for my characters. I think that it's absolutely needed because there are times in which you understand your character so well and it will kind of come as a like it's just intuitive. But the more that I was so busy working with other authors and editing their manuscripts and then coming back and trying to find that moment of like being in my own work, which you have less time and so it's harder to do, the more I turn to psychology and personalities, and now I'm using the Enneagram, and it helped me figure them out faster. And when I'm writing a scene and they're not acting correctly, I'm like, you know what? You wouldn't act like this right now. Why wouldn't you act like this? Because you haven't gone through your full, arc of character, and you haven't changed yet. So it keeps you from making your characters too good, which is that thing that we say a lot, like your characters are too good. And like, what does that even mean? It means that they're not acting like they would. Like they should be hurting somebody around them, like verbally, like not acting properly because they haven't changed yet. And we don't like to do that to them because we love our characters, and it's because they're working out of their fear. Like you talk a lot about like the fear of money, or like making it, having that different mindset in the manifestation. It's like, if you're not centered, you will act like this out of fear. And so your characters will do the same because they're humans, or they're animals acting like humans.
And it's so great because the way she describes things too, she puts, the Enneagrams in a circle. And so she gives you a really good basis of like, what would so I'm an Enneagram 9. And so when I'm operating out of like stress and fear, I'm the achiever. I'm the 3, right? So
I'm
it's like
3 and I act like a 9.
No wonder we get along so well.
Now that we're centered.
Yes. Centered into our space. Yeah. It's so crazy.
But it's crazy how you read it and you're like, oh my gosh.
And all of a sudden you're like, that makes a little too much sense. And now I have goosebumps. Okay.
Yeah, it's freaky. It's freaky. And I think it's great too, because she then says like, you're probably going to write characters because you care more about them in these certain Enneagrams. Like that's probably going to be your main characters. And I looked back at my books and was like, it's like she's psychic.
Right? How did she do that?
Right. And your ideal reader, like that was a breakthrough for me too. Like most likely your ideal readers will be very close to how you react, how you see the world, which makes sense. Right.
Sure.
It just
like the energies are attracted to like energies.
Right. So instead of running around in circles trying to make an Enneagram 6 or 7 or whatever, I don't know off the top of my head. I have to read it again.
Yep. It's like a nonstop process. It's so good. Like there's so much to dig into it, but
it's great. It helps you understand people around you and your characters, and it will help you especially write the characters who are nothing like you.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I've read a lot of manuscripts where it's just like, that is a caricature. It's not a person. So how can you write a villain in a sort of exaggerated way, because that's how you want to write it, but not a caricature? And I think that's about understanding personality and putting humanity to that person.
Yes.
And I think that it's made easier understanding these
it is. Yeah, for sure. It helps because she does break it down, into like such a manageable methodology. Like what is their core fear? What is their core like desire? What are these characters, these people who are in this operating out of this Enneagram looking for? And so it helps to just, when you're trying to develop that character arc or trying to develop the character in general, just understanding like what makes them tick. It's almost like the condensed like Cliff Notes version in some ways, It's super cool.
And it doesn't, did you always feel like in the beginning when you first found out about this inner desire and outer desire, everyone has a different name for it, right?
Yep.
And I don't know about you, but I like got super overwhelmed because I was just like, well, I don't know. And I started making it like very philosophical. And I think a lot of writers, because
that's the achiever in you.
Right. We're just like, well, it should be something very deep, and that you go to the,
I just want to be able to get up in the morning and have coffee with no kids.
Right. That's actually what I want. What are we talking about? Life goals.
Right.
I want to drink my coffee hot.
Only thing.
Yeah, but I think it just helps you go like, okay, well, he's an achiever. Well, what would he want then? Well, he wants recognition. Oh, easy. You don't have to go into this like, I don't know, write these long
well, as a child, he was forced to do XYZ. Yeah.
Yes. And we can spend too long on that instead of writing the book. Everyone has a different reaction to it, but I think it makes it clearer and easier. And kudos to Claire. She wrote a great book.
She did. And she did a great Kickstarter too. I mean, it rocked, and she's going on to do her fiction Kickstarter right now, which is pretty cool. So I agree with you that there's definitely this change in the wind when it comes to like how we're trying to launch as authors and get out there and be seen. and it's working really well. It's at least it seems to be. And so I would recommend any author who's listening to this to definitely look into like, what are these authors doing and how is it working good for them? And how can you emulate it if you're interested in the Kickstarter side of things? I should bring Russell onto the podcast. I haven't asked.
You should.
Yeah, he'd be a really interesting person.
So much.
Oh, for sure.
And I think he's so down to earth as well. So I'm part of I bought the class because I thought my whole, last year and this year is to have strategy and plan, because I might be an achiever, but I am not organized. So, I tend to like fall head first into things. But it's also surrounding yourself by people who are very confident in their authorship. And him saying he makes like graphic novels and stuff. And he says, my readership is very small.
Right.
And just hearing that, and like Claire talks about it too for one of her series, and just being like, wow, own it. Like, just own it. Like, I want to write this and I'm going to write it. And it's okay that only 1,000 people read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just being okay with it. And like that sort of energy just makes you like, okay, I don't have to be part of this rat race of beating the Amazon algorithm.
Yes, right. I think I wrote a blog post when I first started out called like F being relevant. It literally spelt it out though, because it was like at the time that was the buzzword, relevancy. Like you have to be relevant. What you're writing has to be relevant. What you're posting on social has to be relevant. And I was so sick of hearing that term that I was like, F being relevant. And I put this like whole blog post together about it. And I think it's so true though, because authors, we all have this thing that has to come out sometimes. And sometimes it can be written to market. Sometimes it can be a thing that really does resonate with the masses. But sometimes you have to put out something that's ahead of the time, that's ahead of where everybody else is, because it's the thing trying to come out of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And when you don't do it, if you don't allow that, now you're shutting down part of yourself and you're not going to enjoy what you're writing. You're going to enjoy your job. It's like,
yes, I know you're not going to enjoy it. And I mean, like you said, it could be writing to masses. I think most books are for the masses, right? It's just whether or not they find it. Like, look at Colleen Hoover. She was doing it for years before somebody found her.
Yeah.
And again, you're not going to be for everyone. Like, I think this strategy still of like NetGalley and Goodreads and all, like that has changed as well. The readers have changed. Some people have a chip on their shoulders on the reviews. And so that becomes part of the rat race too. Like, did the right reader pick up your book to get that review?
Right.
Maybe not. And when it's no, it can be really damaging. And it doesn't mean that your book's bad. It means that reader didn't like your book. But that doesn't mean anything.
If they're from a snobby site, not saying that NetGalley is snobby, but there are definitely some snobby-ish reviewers on NetGalley.
Absolutely. Goodreads too. I mean, everyone has their opinion, and it's totally fine to feel that you have the right to opine on things, but I mean, I've seen reviews that are like, I mean, a friend of mine, she got a review for 4 stars, and within the review, it says 5 out of 5. And you're like, but you didn't give her 5.
Right. What are you doing?
Or people who's like, well, within my reviewing, 3 means actually 5. And you're like, that's not how it works.
Yeah. Right. There's a reason it's like 5 stars there.
Right. So that's not how Amazon works. So you've actually like really put a dent on that author. And so you can't control that. And so you just have to sort of roll with the punches and the changes, and readers are going to change and likes are going to change. And maybe your book will be phenomenal. Like who was that lady last year that got her song on Stranger Things and like 30 years later, it's a hit,
Right.
You never know. So write the book. I'm still
right. Well, Neil Gaiman with all of his like shows that have come out, Sandman and Good Omens and all the things, Lucifer, whatever. It's like all of a sudden he's everywhere, and it's like he's been writing this stuff for decades.
For decades, he's just kept going, right? So you can't be discouraged by a small readership. You can't be discouraged by changes. You got to be experimental, and like you always say, just like be very open-minded about it.
For sure, I agree, because there's always something else. There's always a trend that you could be chasing. There's always something to be doing. And you could spend your life doing that if you want, or you can enjoy the thing that you're actually working on. And so if you're feeling called to try something new, if you're being called to do something different, maybe you're just ahead of the time instead of falling behind or feeling like you're not doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. Because that is so key, to listen to more more of the inner you. Like, what is it you're trying to do? What is it you really being called to do?
Right, right. And how many things are stepping stones? Like
Yeah.
we all have to start somewhere. Like I refuse to ever be embarrassed about something I wrote before because it was what I could write at the moment. And I tell everyone that all the time. Like, you could work on your book for 10 years, and depending on life circumstances, maybe it takes that long. Or you can just take the risk and bring it out and be proud of what you could do. And
Yeah.
then you just keep moving forward. And then,
Yep. I love that. That's such a good way to think of it too. I think so many authors hold themselves back thinking it's not perfect. It's not where they want it to be.
right.
But it's like you don't know what you don't know until you finish the whole thing, get through that whole cycle, let it kind of go out into the world and see what happens, and then learn from that experience of it. Especially those first few books, I think are really hard for us authors because they're like our baby. It's like our first
Mhm.
initial like
Like you're
step
actually
into,
in it.
yeah, you want it to be so good. And it's never going to be like the most perfect book ever. I don't care. I don't care which author you are. But it has to get out there. You have to go through with
You
it.
have to do it, and you have to find your voice, and there's really so many ways to write a book. Like I don't you've read hundreds of books in your life, right? And really there is deep point of view, there is, far away point of view, whatever we call it, deep character. Who There's so many different ways. You read a book from 80 years ago and it's completely different.
Yes.
People like who are very well-known authors now, you can pick up their book and go, well, that's not what I've been taught, like this seems very distant or whatever. So there's just so many different ways to write a book. You have to find your voice, and you can't do that unless you write,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
your way of writing, you're gonna find your readers if you stay true to yourself and you bring them out and you just say, you know what? It's just a stepping stone. It's okay that you don't like all my books. It's
Yeah,
okay.
for sure. It's like I love Lucy's score, but I can't say that like Forever Never was my favorite of hers. It was great, but it was not her best.
Yeah.
And where it's like I love the books that she's coming out with now. It's all like it's all those learning processes though. It's all
Right.
and even you as a reader, you're sometimes you read a book and it's just not where you are personally, and then you read it again 2 years later and you're like, why didn't I love this then? What? You
Exactly.
know?
Isn't that weird?
So it's like it's all perception anyways.
Right, right.
So
It's
weird.
funny. It's like you'll read things and just be like, I thought I loved this. Or you know,
Right? I thought this
what
was the
mood are you
greatest
in?
book
What's
when I
happening
first.
in your life at the time?
Yeah, yeah. It's so weird, but it's cool too in a way because we're like our minds are so plasticity. Like there's neuroplasticity. There we go.
Right.
It's like we're so capable of changing and shifting all the time. And yeah, it's just as an author and as a reader, as a person, it's like there's always things that are going to be moving around and shifting. And so we can't be too hard on ourselves when we finish something in the moment and have to move on. And all of a sudden you're like, I've grown as a person. Well, of course you have. Of course you've grown as an author. That's
Yes.
how this works.
Yes, yes. I mean, you'll see it too when you start receiving feedback with it, like without shaking and sweating.
Right?
Like,
Right?
and being very open to it and not being like feeling like somebody just slapped you across the face. It's like, I mean, sometimes it still is like, oh, well, that's disappointing. But you just shift as like the more you do something, the easier it is.
Well, and if you have that mindset too, of it's all working out for me, like it's
Right.
this criticism, it's meant to help me get better. It's meant to
True.
help the story be better. As long as you can
True.
go in it with that perception and remind yourself of it when it slips.
Yes.
I think that helps a lot,
Yes. Yes. You take a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a beat,
Okay.
go, okay, it's all working out for me. It's all working out for
Yes.
me.
Yes. And a lot of it is like, okay, again, back to the like, make the decision as an informed author. Will you do this thing that they told you to do or not?
Yeah.
Or that they comment on or not? Like, you will have to accept the fact that some people won't love your characters, and that will be, feel personal.
Right? Right? Because it's a part of you, like a little part of you. What?
Like
You
that,
can't.
but that's actually like part of like is me.
Yeah, right? Like I actually do order my coffee the way she ordered it in the book.
Yeah.
Like what?
I thought that was funny. You didn't think that was funny? Okay, never
Right?
mind.
Fine. Fine. I see how you are. Oh, okay. So when it comes to all these cool insights, so that obviously you have much knowledge, do you bring these into your retreats then in your workshop? Obviously, the workshops you probably do, but like the retreats, do you have moments where you're teaching this stuff first and then everyone goes and then does their writing thing? Like how are your retreats being structured?
So the online retreats that we just finished up when this comes out, it is structured with the sprinting room open. So I have like a Zoom room open. You can come in and write together. Not every writer likes to do that, but there is about at least an hour in between each workshop, and there's only 3 workshops a day to promote a healthy lifestyle and a little bit of writing. So we'll have, sort of integrated meditative writing in the morning, a break, an intense workshop. And the workshops are set up so that there's teaching, but then there's time to brainstorm and ask questions and maybe and write out the answers. They'll have a checklist or something. It depends on the teacher. I'm not teaching all of them. I work with different people. So I had Tracy Gardner come in and Louis Georgestad come in. And so they're in the moment, like kind of filling out the checklist as well, so that you leave feeling like you did something and like you really get it instead of just theory. You have the opportunity to ask a question, and then you have the moment to like either go take a walk, and sort of let it sort of just develop within your brain, or to write if that's good. And I didn't want to pack it too much. I think 3 workshops at 90 minutes each is kind of a lot. They might be a little exhausted. I'll have to pull them. But then in the in-person retreat, so we're having our first one in Spain in September, and it's fun because it's a smaller group, and so I can ask them, and what are you working on? Are you working on nonfiction or fiction? And how can we mold different workshops for you? And I think the main point of the in-person is that you get some writing done and that you have access to asking questions. And then at night, what we really want to do is come together and talk about the books and where are you stuck, or what have you learned, and what could you tell people? Because you always want to tell people like, this is what I learned, and you want people to be like, that's cool.
Right?
I remember learning that, oh hey, I didn't know that. And our partners are usually very tired of it.
I'm pretty lucky because Colin actually, I met him. He was a writer. I mean, he still is, but he hasn't written for a while. So for him, it's like, it's fun, but yeah.
Yeah, my husband's like an economist. He's on the completely the other side of the brain,
That would be a little bit more of a stretch.
Yes, I can see his eyes clouding over. But I think it's really rejuvenating to be with other writers.
Yes.
To see that I think we can feel like everyone else knows what they're doing and we don't, but to sort of feel like we're together, we can give each other advice, we can ask each other. It breaks down those walls too of like getting critiques or criticism. I hate to use the word criticism, but more like critiques or reviews. It sort of allows you to toughen up a little bit in that and to be able to give, a review back and to learn how to do that, because there's definitely a way. So I'm really excited for September. I think it'll be my first year doing it in Spain. My dream is to do it twice a year.
Nice.
So I'm very excited for it. I'm excited for the people who have signed up. There's still time to sign up if you want to.
How do they get signed up?
They just go to my website, katcaldwell.com, and right at the top, it's like, do you want to go write with me in Spain? It's an awesome country. Food is really good. So
I have not been to Spain, but I can imagine because I think most of us in like high school, we have to take a foreign language, and we had for when I grew up, we had the most amazing. She was a Portuguese woman, but she was teaching Spanish. So half the time you're trying to figure out Spanish and she'd slip into Portuguese and she was like, oh, dang it. She'd have to like try to fix it. But we always had like she'd have like I don't even know. It was like almost like every Friday she'd come in with like an authentic Spanish dish. It was so cool. And so you got to try it, like 2 bites of it, whatever it was. But it was super cool because you got to experience something that was so different. It was neat.
Yes. I would love to do it in Portugal. I love Portugal as well. I'm not sure how the Americans would take to eating fish every day.
They'd be like, where's my steak?
Yeah, I need some beef. What is that? They have good beef too, but yeah, that's my dream, is to sort of expand that out. And I love traveling. So I think that it also like really helps you shift because you're there to write. It's like, okay, I'm not in my office anymore. As much as I love Zoom, I love that it helps us interact. I'm not sure you and I would ever have met if we didn't live right now in this time.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited for it. So if you want to come to Spain,
heck yes.
you should come. You should
And it's
come.
so great because retreats and well, especially retreats and those interactions that you're going to be offering, even if you're a brand new author or if you're an experienced author, you both have things that you can share and experiences
Yes.
that the other may not even have thought of because
Right.
you're living a different time, you're living a different perception, you're living in a different maybe era of the publishing realm, so you're seeing it differently. And so there's always
Right.
those benefits that everybody kind of gets from that interaction and exchange.
So
So
true. That's so true. I mean, it can bring an experienced writer out of a rut or help them see, like,
yes.
oh, maybe I should change some stuff. That's
Yeah.
absolutely true. And I do hope to do local ones. We were talking before. I've just kind of come up against some logistics on it, but I do hope to introduce those in 2024 in person
Love it.
in the States. So we'll see. We'll
That's
see.
awesome. Okay, so thank you for obviously coming back onto the show. But
Yes.
as a refresher, if my audience, if my listeners are wanting to find you, can you one more time give us a shout out on where to find you on the interwebs?
Yes, katcaldwell.com. So it's Kat and then Caldwell. That is my website. You can find me on Instagram, katcaldwell.author, Kat Caldwell author on Facebook, because of course.
Because why
Of course it has
not?
to be different. I'm not on TikTok. My husband has confidentiality issues with the government. So yes, a part of that whole thing. So it's mostly
Understood.
Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on my website, get on my mailing list. I'm very interactive on my mailing list. You can literally hit reply and ask me a question. It will be me answering that. So
I love it. I love it. Well, thanks, Kat, for being here. I so appreciate you being here.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, guys, I don't know about you, but Kat has definitely sold me on wanting to go to Spain. I want to go to Spain and I want to do one of the retreats. It sounds like so much fun. I know for me, it's been on my mind to eventually bring in retreats and to do fun things, like I mentioned in the podcast episode, where I'd love to bring people to this area of Minnesota, especially in the summertime or fall even, when the leaves are starting to turn, because it's just absolutely gorgeous out here. And I know that we have so many resorts and things that are going on. And it's definitely something that's on my radar. I just haven't had the time or the opportunity to pull the trigger yet. But just know that at some point, that's something that I would love to do as well. It's obviously not as exotic as Spain. We'll leave that up to Kat and her amazing team that she's working with. But overall, I just want to remind you guys that being an author doesn't have to be an isolated desert, right? It doesn't have to be a deserted island. It doesn't have to be something where you're doing it completely alone and by yourself. We have some amazing resources, some amazing people who are out there doing the work, who are teaching authors how to do more, how to grow, how to be better at what we do, including Kat. And it's important to remind ourselves that we at any point in time can connect with these people. We at any point in time can go to a retreat, can learn to hone our craft better, can learn something new about our craft even after we've been doing it for years. Things in the industry change a lot. And so we're seeing shifts in like the way that we're launching books, like we talked about with Kickstarter. Kickstarter's been a huge thing this year. If you've been following the podcast, you already know this. We've been talking about things like AI and how it's impacting the way that authors get to do things and whether or not we should be scared of this new introduction or if we should be embracing it. And all of these things come together to incorporate and make up the DNA of what being an indie author in 2023 really looks like. So I hope this podcast interview was inspiring to you. I hope it helped give you some hope and give you a little bit of insight into the fact that, all authors are in the same boat. We're always working towards upping our mindset game, being better at writing our books, being better at creating our characters, using Enneagram to be able to do fun things with those characters and understand them on deeper levels. Like we're deploying all of the things right now just to make our creations the best that we can. I've seen over the past 10 years or 12 years, however long it's been now, I've lost count because of COVID, however long it's been, I've seen over the years this transformation, this growth go from like, we need to hustle and grind and do all the things and be all the places all at once, to now understanding that we are in control of our destinies. We're in control of the way that we get to have our careers and the way that we get to move forward. And as we're doing that, we are creating some really incredible new dynamics that authors behind us are getting to follow. And it's pretty amazing to watch, actually. If you'd like to get the podcast transcript to today's podcast episode, head over to authorrevolution.org/183, and you can download it there. Of course, I'll have all of the show notes there with the links over to Kat Caldwell's website and her retreats so that you can check them out if you're interested in hopping in, and I hope that you do. In the meantime, have a great week getting your words on the page. Think about what fun new opportunities lie ahead of you, and go forth and start your author revolution